Hey everyone, you're starting out on your English learning journey. Well, you've definitely come to the right place.
That's right. We're going to give you a clear and simple guide to all the essentials. Think of this as your own personal roadmap. No detours, just the most important stuff you need to get going.
We've been poring over some really great beginner materials, and today we're going to distill all those key points into one easy to digest package. We'll cover all the bases, how to talk about time, the words that make up sentences, those little words that connect everything, and of course a whole bunch of super practical vocabulary that you can start using right away.
Exactly. We'll be focusing on the core building blocks, the things you need to know to understand and speak English without getting bogged down in all the complicated stuff, so you'll be able to build a solid foundation and feel confident about making progress.
Sounds good, right? So what's on the menu for today's deep dive? Well, first up, we'll tackle the three basic English tenses: the present, the past, and the future. These are your tools for talking about when things happen.
Right, because time is like the backbone of how we communicate, isn't it? After that, we'll move on to the key players in any sentence: nouns and pronouns. You can think of nouns as the stars of the show and pronouns as their clever understudies.
Then we'll spice things up with adjectives and adverbs, the words that add color and detail to our descriptions. And we can't forget those little connectors that glue everything together: prepositions.
And to wrap things up, we'll equip you with some must-know everyday vocabulary: numbers, colors, days of the week, months, and words for family, friends, food, clothes, even travel, all the stuff you need to navigate everyday conversations.
All right, let's jump right in with the first stop on our language journey: English tenses. And we'll start with the present tense.
Okay, so the present tense isn't just about things that are happening right this second, right? It's also about habits, facts, things that are generally true.
Exactly. Like when you say, I go to school every day. That's a habit, a routine. Or, she eats breakfast at 8 o'clock. Again, part of a daily schedule. And then we have facts. Things that are always true, like, we live in a big house. That's just a statement of fact.
And the nice thing about the present tense is that for a lot of verbs, it's pretty simple. You just use the base form of the verb, the simplest version, no fancy endings or anything like that.
Now, what about when we want to talk about things that have already happened? That's where the past tense comes in.
Right, the past tense. This is our storytelling tense. It lets us talk about events that are over and done with, things that happened yesterday, last week, last year, any time before now.
The examples from our source materials are pretty straightforward. I walked to the store yesterday, he watched a movie last night, and they played football on Sunday. These are all actions that are already taken place.
And there's a handy little trick for forming the past tense with a lot of verbs. You just add ed to the end, like walk becomes walked and play becomes played.
Now, I do have to add that English loves to have exceptions to its rules. And there are some irregular verbs where this ed rule doesn't work. Like you say went instead of goed. But for now, just focus on the regular verbs and that ed ending, and you'll be good to go.
Totally. And that brings us to the future, the land of possibilities and plans.
Right. When we want to talk about what's going to happen, what we're going to do tomorrow or next week or next year, we use the future tense.
Our sources give some great examples. I will go to the park tomorrow. She will travel to Paris next week. And we will eat dinner at 7 o'clock. These are all actions that are yet to come.
And there are a couple of common ways to express the future in English. The most common one is using will, like in those examples. But you can also use going to. For instance, you could say, I'm going to visit my grandmother. Both will and going to are perfectly fine. They just have slightly different shades of meaning.
And with that, you've got the basics of talking about time in English: the present, the past, and the future. That's a pretty big step, right?
Definitely a big step. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the building blocks of any sentence: nouns and pronouns. So what exactly are these?
Well, nouns are basically the names we give to everything around us: people, places, things, ideas. They're the actors in our sentences, the ones doing the action, or sometimes the ones receiving the action.
The examples we have are nice and clear. John is a teacher. So John is a noun because it's a person's name. And teacher is also a noun because it describes a type of person.
Then we have the cat is on the bed. Here, cat and bed are nouns because they're things, objects. And last but not least, London is a big city. Both London and city are nouns, naming a place and a type of place.
Okay, so nouns are all about the who, what, and where. Now, what about pronouns? Why do we need those?
Imagine you had to repeat the same noun over and over again in a sentence. It would sound pretty awkward.
Oh, absolutely. Like, my friend Sarah is very kind. My friend Sarah loves to cook. I often go to my friend Sarah's house for dinner. That's way too much Sarah.
Exactly. That's where pronouns swoop in to save the day. They're like substitutes for nouns, so we don't have to keep repeating ourselves.
So instead of that mouthful, we could say, my friend Sarah is very kind. She loves to cook. I often go to her house for dinner.
Much smoother, right?
Much smoother. She and her replace Sarah, so it's less repetitive and more natural sounding. And our sources give us a handy list of common pronouns. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. These are like your essential pronoun toolkit.
So to sum it up, nouns are the main actors, and pronouns are their stand-ins.
Got it.
Now, how can we add some extra pizzazz to our sentences?
Well, that's where adjectives and adverbs come into play. They're like the sprinkles and the cherry on top of your English language sundae.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between these two types of words?
Adjectives are all about describing nouns. They give us more information about the qualities of a person, place, or thing. For example, it is a big house. Big is the adjective, and it tells us about the size of the house.
Okay, so big describes house. What about adverbs? Adverbs usually describe verbs. They tell us how, when, or where an action happens, like he runs fast. Fast is the adverb describing how he runs. She speaks clearly. Clearly describes how she speaks. And they arrived early. Early tells us when they arrived.
Ah, so adjectives modify nouns, and adverbs modify verbs. That's a good way to remember it. And there's a little clue for spotting adverbs, right? They often end in mole.
Yeah, a lot of them do, like quickly, slowly, happily. But there are exceptions, like fast and early. So it's not a foolproof rule.
Now, why should you, as an English learner, care about adjectives and adverbs?
Because they allow you to be more precise and expressive. Instead of just saying, he walks, you can say, he walks slowly or he walks quickly, which paints a much clearer picture in the listener's mind. Adjectives and adverbs help you add those little nuances that make your English richer and more interesting.
Totally. Now let's move on to those small but mighty words that can sometimes feel a bit tricky. Prepositions. What's the deal with these?
Prepositions are like the little bridges in our sentences. They connect different parts and show the relationships between words, especially when we're talking about location and time.
Okay, let's start with location. Give us some examples.
Sure, the book is on the table. On tells us the position of the book relative to the table. The cat is under the bed. Under tells us where the cat is. And the bag is next to the chair. Next to gives us the bag's position compared to the chair.
So prepositions of place tell us where things are. They can also tell us when things happen.
Exactly. We go to school in the morning. In specifies the time of day. My birthday is on Monday. On tells us the day of the week. And I have lunch at 12 o'clock. At gives us a specific point in time.
Our sources list some of the most common prepositions. In, on, at, under, over, behind, next to. These little words are everywhere, so it's really worth getting comfortable with them.
What's fascinating about prepositions is how they can completely change the meaning of a sentence just by shifting the relationship between the words. Think about the picture is above the door versus the picture is below the door. Same nouns, different prepositions, totally different meanings.
Right, those tiny words pack a punch. Now let's talk about how we put all these pieces together to form simple sentences, the foundation of English grammar.
At its core, a simple sentence needs two main ingredients, a subject and verb. The subject is who or what is doing the action, and the verb is the action itself.
Can you break that down with some super simple examples?
Sure. I eat. I is the subject, the one doing the eating, and eat is the verb, the action being performed. She runs. She is the subject, runs is the verb. They play. They is the subject, play is the verb. These are the bare bones of sentences.
And then we can start adding more layers to these sentences, right?
Absolutely. We can add objects, which are the things receiving the action of the verb, or we can add details about where or when the action happens. So, I eat becomes I eat pizza. Pizza is the object, the thing being eaten. She runs becomes she runs every morning, adding information about when the action takes place. And they play football in the park, adding both an object, football, and information about the location in the park.
So the basic structure is subject plus verb. And then we can add an object, place, or time, depending on what we want to say.
Precisely. Our source material gives us a handy little formula, subject plus verb plus object, place, time. And the parts in parentheses are optional. You don't need them in every sentence.
Right, sometimes it's just I eat, and sometimes it's I eat pizza in the park with my friends. It depends on how much information you want to pack in. All right, let's move on to some practical vocabulary, starting with numbers.
Numbers are essential, right, for counting, telling time, shopping, all sorts of things. Our source material lists the numbers 1 through 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These are the building blocks for everything numerical.
Next up, let's add some color to our vocabulary. Literally.
Colors are super useful for describing things. Our list includes red, blue, green, yellow, black, white, orange, purple, pink, brown. And you can use them in simple sentences like, I like the color blue, or she is wearing a red dress.
Now, to keep track of our wit, we need to know the days.
Right. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you can use them in sentences like, today is Wednesday, or I will see you on Friday.
And last but not least, the months of the year.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. You might say, my birthday's in December, or we are going on vacation in July.
Okay, so we've got numbers, colors, days, and months covered. Now, let's talk about the people who are important to us, family and friends. What are some key words we need here?
Well, for family members, we have mother, father, sister, brother, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, cousin. You can use these words in simple sentences like, my mother's a doctor, or I have 2 sisters.
And it's not just about naming our family members, but also about how we talk about our friends.
Exactly. You might say, this is my best friend, or we went to the cinema with our friends.
And like we talked about before, we can use adjectives to describe our family and friends.
Yeah, you could say, my dad is very tall, or my friend is really funny.
Okay, let's move on to another essential topic, food and drink. This is a fun one.
For fruits, we have apple, banana, orange, grape, watermelon. And you might say, I love to eat bananas, or watermelon is my favorite fruit.
And for veggies.
Carrot, tomato, potato, onion, cucumber. You can use them in sentences like, I put onions in my salad, or carrots are good for your eyes.
And of course, drinks.
Water, juice, tea, coffee, milk. You might say, I drink coffee every morning, or she prefers tea with milk.
And then we have some useful phrases for talking about our basic needs around food and drink.
All right, I'm hungry when you need to eat. I'm thirsty when you need something to drink. And what do you want to eat when you're deciding what to have?
Okay, next up, clothes and fashion.
Here are some basic clothing words. Shirt, pants, dress, jacket, shoes, socks, skirt, hat. You can use them in sentences like, he's wearing a blue shirt, or she bought a new hat.
And we can use colors to make those descriptions even more vivid.
Yeah, like, I have a red dress, or he's wearing black shoes.
Are there any useful phrases for talking about clothes?
Sure. What are you wearing is a common way to ask about someone's outfit. I like your outfit is a nice compliment. And you might say, this shirt is new, if you're showing off something you just bought.
And let's not forget the connection between clothes and the weather.
Right, you might say, it's cold, so I need a coat, or it's hot, I'm going to wear shorts.
All right, our final vocabulary category is travel and transportation.
For different ways to get around, we have bus, car, train, plane, bicycle, boat, taxi. And you might say, I take the bus to work, or they travel to Spain by plane.
What about words related to the travel experience itself?
Well, we have ticket, passport, bag, suitcase, map, station, airport. You might say, I need to buy a train ticket, or we are waiting for our bags at the airport.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about basic tenses, nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, simple sentences, and a ton of essential vocabulary.
It's been a whirlwind tour of the English language, hasn't it? But remember, this is just the beginning of your journey. It's like we've given you the basic tools, and now it's up to you to start building with them.
So what's a good next step for you, the listener? Our sources suggest going back and listening to this deep dive again, and this time, try to really focus on the different elements we've talked about.
Yeah, listen for the tenses being used, notice the nouns and pronouns, spot the adjectives and adverbs, see if you can identify the prepositions and break down the sentences into their basic parts. The more you listen and practice, the more these concepts will sink in.
And as you listen, think about which vocabulary areas or grammar points resonate with you the most. Which ones are you most likely to use in your own life? And then start practicing those specifically.
Exactly. Connect the learning to your own needs and interests. If you're always talking about your family, focus on those family words. If you love to cook, practice talking about food and recipes. The more personal the connection, the easier it will be to remember and use.
And here's a little challenge for you. Choose one new English word that we talked about today and try to use it in a sentence at some point today. It could be anything, a color, a type of food, a family member, anything at all.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just try it out. The act of using it will help solidify the word in your mind and boost your confidence.
So there you have it, the essentials of English, all in one deep dive. We hope this gives you a solid foundation to build upon and that you feel empowered to keep exploring this fascinating language.
And remember, every step you take, every word you learn is a victory. So keep practicing, keep listening, keep learning, and most importantly, have fun.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time.
See you later.